Welcome to the Feel Good Weddings podcast by Polka Dot Wedding. My name is Dorothy and I'm the founder and editor. I have spent 15 years building this business and not a single moment of that was alone. I have been so lucky to be mentored, educated and taught by so many amazing people. And each and every day I work with amazing Australian and New Zealand wedding pros. So this podcast episode, it's a special one because it's tailored to you as a business owner or you as someone who just might be interested in business. I'm passionate about learning and educating myself each and every day to do better as a business owner, and I hope you'll join me on the journey. The Polka Dot Wedding team is honoured to conduct our work on the land of the BoonWurrung, WoiWorung, Eora and Kuring-gai people. We honour the traditional Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander custodians of the land, and we pay our respects to elders past and present. If you're a wedding vendor who feels utterly exhausted right now, then this chat is for you. I've invited Amy Summers of Craft Consulting, an Australian business coach, along to join us today, and she's going to chat with us about all things burnout. Amy has coached many people over the years. She's coached corporates, she's coached many wedding businesses, including probably some of you listening, and she's also coached me. I really love how Amy guides herself and her clients through a values-based business model, and in a world where it's all about success and getting to the next six figures, it's really refreshing. So I've asked Amy along today to chat to us about burnout and how we as an industry can survive it, identify it, and work out how to overcome it. It's a really interesting chat, and I really hope that if you're feeling a little bit exhausted today and you're feeling like you're not really sure how to get out of this burnout pattern, that this chat can help. Hello, Amy. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk about, I guess, a topic that it doesn't feel exciting, but I'm hoping that we will be able to help. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on. It definitely doesn't feel exciting. In fact, it feels rather morose and a little bit sad, really. But I think it's something really important because I don't think a lot of people are talking about it. But before we get into our subject today, which is burnout, can you tell me a little bit about you and craft coaching and how you got into coaching and what you're passionate about?
Absolutely. So I have been a coach and a leadership development consultant for 15 years. And I'm an accredited coach, and I'm really passionate about evidence-based tools and using resources that have some scientific backing to them. And, I guess what is predominantly the foundation of everything that we do in our business is that we're helping people find a design of their business that works for them. And that can, be energizing and feel effortless for them. And I guess I'm passionate about it because I've been there, and I know that feeling when you aren't really sure of your direction and you aren't really sure of what makes you different and what your version is, and you're trying to fit into a method or a mold that you think is a great example of how to run a business, but it doesn't feel right. So, yeah, I'm really passionate about helping people find their own way. And a great deal of our clients in the wedding industry or have connections to the wedding industry, so they may have a product that is supplied to wedding industries or businesses, and I've been pretty across what the industry has been feeling for the last few years. And it's been super tough on, the wedding industry across Australia, but particularly, Victoria, New South Wales, the states that have been in lockdown for the longest. So I'm really glad to be here and hoping that our chat today will help somebody.
I hope it will too. And I want to go back to what you said about purpose-led businesses, because what I love about what you do at Craft and what I've loved about what you've helped me clarify so much with Polka Dot Wedding is values, because you really focus on creating situations and tools where businesses are able to really focus on what they value and use that as a foundation of their business, which I think is what gets us through situations like pandemics. So can you tell me a little bit more about that values-led business model that you help your clients with.
Oh, that's so true. Yeah, it does get you through the tough times. So a values-aligned business really is, a business that has the values or the things that are important to them weaved through behaviours, weaved through the decisions that they're making, weaved through their strategy, and weaved through how they serve their customer or their client. So, in seeing hundreds and hundreds of businesses over 15 years get clear on their values, the thing that has always stood out to me is when a business is more aligned with the things that are crucially important to them and that, are meaningful, it just feels easier for the team. It feels easier for the leader. And it feels easier for the client and the customer to engage with that business and to be part of that community. So I think it's, getting back to what I was saying earlier, getting back to that easeful design of business. And I think when you're clear about your values, you're probably clearer about the impact that you're wanting to make on the world through your work. And that means, all those day-to-day little decisions that we make, but also how that influences the world around us. So it's something I am absolutely passionate about, and I've seen the impact of over years and years of working with people.
And I think as much as I love being a values-based business now, and I think I've really crystallized that, even the most values-based businesses will have found the past, especially weddings, the past couple of years really, really difficult with the 2 years of lockdown. Now the 6 months of fitting 4 years of weddings essentially into a couple of months, having no financial support and trying to dodge getting sick. So it's no wonder that even if we are values-based, we're very exhausted and, dare we say it, burnt out, which is the subject, obviously, of today's episode. So let's dive into how do we identify burnout? Because I know 99% of the vendors I talk to are exhausted. They're talking about, I just can't get the motivation, what is going on, and they don't even really have words for it.
Yeah. It is hard to, I think the feeling, but it is hard to define what it is. And I guess before we start this chat as well, Dot, I find it really important to draw the line between coaching and clinical practice. So burnout is one of those experiences that sort of straddles the two worlds. So coaching being about, the thriving of a human being, and getting you to be your best, and then clinical practice or therapy as being the place where, we're helping people get to that neutral space. So we're helping them through a survival situation. And burnout could probably be classified in either or. So, I'm just wanting to reiterate that I am not qualified to diagnose burnout. But after 15 years of coaching, I'm pretty good at seeing the signs. And I guess the things that I look out for in clients are probably the same things that a therapist might look out for as well. And, this has come from my background. One of the first experiences of my coaching career was really working with survivors of the Black Saturday bushfires from about 2010 to 2011. So I was employed as a skill-based coach and consultant by the Department of Education to basically help the survivors of the fires try to rebuild a sense of hope and a sense of a pathway out of, the incredibly traumatic event that they'd been through and continue to go through. And so through that experience, I learned a lot about, that trauma response, the experience of supporting people through an experience that's all-encompassing, constantly moving, constantly changing, but also that, the people around me and myself as well were going through too. So I lived in an area that was affected by the bushfires as well. So it's very much like the pandemic in that there were a lot of people involved in the response. And I guess what I learnt from those experiences is that, identifying burnout is probably a long-term journey. It's not a short-term journey. And basically burnout is being stuck in a really normal process of processing an event or processing an experience that, I guess as human beings, we all go through at some point. And especially we go through a heightened version of that when we go through a crisis or a really stressful situation happens. So I guess the normal response would be we're sitting in prevention or protection mode. So we're coasting along. We're not aware of what is coming. And that was definitely our experience in March 2020. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
We had no idea what was coming. And then we have an event and boom, the event happens. Usually it is an event. Sometimes it's a prolonged experience as well. So I think we had both of those things during the pandemic. And, as our beautiful fight or flight response is designed to do, we respond usually from our amygdala. So that's the part of our brain that is programmed to perceive threat and to keep us safe. So if we've perceived that threat to our basic needs, we're going to experience a time of extreme fight or flight response. And I think, we all went through that in 2020. Did you see that in the wedding industry, particularly in 2020?
I think especially in Melbourne, and you and I have talked about this, that I feel like everyone has been traumatized. Like everyone has, especially over the long lockdowns, just the way people talk about it in Melbourne and the way businesses are, especially in the wedding industry. Do we go forward or do we not? Do we wind down? Do we cut back on weddings? Like everything is shifting because I think people are just so absolutely traumatized from what occurred, especially in Melbourne with our long lockdowns and the moving of clients and the refund issues. And there was so much intensity around that. And there has not been a break, as we all know. The pandemic has not finished. We're still all in it.
Absolutely. And what you're describing is that, I guess, then the start of that next stage, which is the recovery stage. So we would start the recovery stage and then something else would happen. Something else would change. We'd get locked down again. The rules would change. I think about particularly the wedding industry, the constant changes of numbers of people you were allowed in a room together, whether it was masks or no masks, whether it was even if you were able to actually get married with a group of people, and then what that looked like for the dance floor, for the food,
and waiting until the last minute to see whether you could even get married, because the lockdowns were announced 6 hours before they happened, and there were so many couples, especially that dreaded Valentine's Day weekend, that lost their day within 6 hours.
Absolutely, yeah. So that recovery stage, which is usually a little bit more black and white in an event. You think about an earthquake or you think about a bushfire. You can usually sort of draw a very grey line, but nevertheless a line in the sand around, okay, the event itself is over. And I think with the lockdowns and the pandemic experience, we haven't had that. So what happens?
So we're not getting any recovery, and that's why we're still in that stage of fight or flight then.
Absolutely, yeah. So
locked.
Our recovery has been very one step forward, two steps back, but also it's been a very slow process. And so usually that process ends in, resiliency, hopefully resiliency. Sometimes it ends in the opposite of that. Our adaptation to the new normal. Whereas I think this has been a really unusual experience because we haven't had that really clear sort of pathway forward.
And if anything, I think the wedding vendors have been in fight or flight through the beginning of this year, because after coming through the trauma of lockdown, they've then had to go and do quadruple the work which is already going to kill your adrenaline as it is.
Absolutely. And remembering too, we're in a global pandemic. Therefore, there is nobody around you that can be your soft place to fall, that is full of energy and full of support and is ready.
Because everyone's in hell.
Well, everybody's felt it. So it has been a very, very much an inside job when it comes to the recovery stage. Absolutely, we've all had support. We've all had people we can reach out to. But, I think we need to also acknowledge that the support people around us are running on pretty low batteries too. So it's a really interesting experience, and it's one that when you talk about burnout, usually when you experience burnout, you get stuck in that sort of crisis stage. So that an initial response, so that amygdala hijack or the fight or flight response. And it's where our mind perceives that the threat is ongoing and we have to be on guard. And then you take the pandemic and you think about how many times we've had to go to that response space in the past 2.5 years, especially in industry like the wedding industry. That is exhausting. It's not sustainable. And it's something that I think is only just starting to be, the impact of that is only just starting to be seen now.
100%. I've said a few times I feel like we're actually in the fallout of the pandemic stage now.
Oh, absolutely.
Whereas like the last 2 lockdown years we were kind of frozen in the middle of it. But now there's no financial support. Everyone's getting sick. We're not doing masks and all that preventative stuff.
Absolutely.
So now we're in that it's all crashing down.
And interestingly, we're not talking about it either.
No.
Whether that be due to political reasons or, just, I guess, burnout from the emotional experience, we're not talking about what's happening right now. And I think for an industry like the wedding industry, the hospitality industry, the tourism industry, those industries that got hit so incredibly hard, it's really important for us to talk about this. So I'm hoping that our podcast today might start some conversation.
So how do you know whether you're burnt out or just tired and overworked? I know there is definitely a difference. So how do we differentiate and figure out what one we feel?
Yeah, good question. It's pretty simple, really. Tiredness and overwork recovers with rest. So, usually you'll be able to trace it back to an event or a set of circumstances, and you can take some time, you can take some rest, you can have some really sort of gentle, peaceful time for yourself, and you should feel your battery recharging. If you are doing that and you still feel tired, you still feel overworked and overwhelmed and stressed, I would probably then look a little deeper into, what might be going on for you. So, asking some questions around, how is my ability to think forward? Am I feeling a sense of hope about the future? Am I feeling like my effort matters? And am I feeling like I can make a difference? If I contribute and I put the effort in, do I actually believe that I can change the outcome? And is my pattern of energy consistent or is it inconsistent? So does it look like crashing and then that sort of malaise and then a high of picking ourselves up and finding a solution? And likewise, if you're feeling that sort of cycle, is it increasing in time frame? So is it happening more frequently and that you're going through the cycle more quickly? Or is it something that's kind of getting better over time? And, just I guess that question around your perception of barriers, when difficulties are coming up for you and there are forks in the road or there are barriers that are coming up for your business or for yourself, do you feel like you can overcome them? Are you going into safety thinking, or are you able to tap into your creativity and say, okay, I'm going to find a solution? And, do you have the energy for that? So there's, I guess, a set of questions that you can ask yourself to figure it out. But ultimately, tiredness and overwork usually recovers itself with rest. And if it can't, then you may be running on a pretty flat battery.
So we're in winter, which is where most of our weddings, luckily for Australia, it's too cold for weddings. So it's very, very quiet for the wedding industry. So there is a lot of chance to recover and be calm and quiet. But if you are listening to this, or in general in the peak of work, and you can't take a step away, you can't fly off to Europe and have a week by the beach and sleep, how do you recover from burnout while still needing to service clients at weddings which can't wait?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, really good question, because, small business doesn't stop, does it?
No.
Even if we're in a quiet time, there'll be so much stuff that particularly the wedding industry is trying to catch up on. So, yeah, quiet time is always such a misleading concept, isn't it?
Yes.
Just, I guess, the usual things like get support. So whether it be clinical therapy or coaching, depending on how you're feeling. So do you feel like you're on that sort of, I guess, neutral space and you want to be better, you want to find your full potential again? Coaching might be great if you're feeling like that. Or if you're feeling like you can't get to neutral and that your energy is so low that it's a struggle just to get to a neutral space where you could say, yeah, I'm content, then a clinical approach might work better for you. And if you're wondering about the differences between those two things, and maybe we could put a link for our listeners about this, but we've written a post about the differences between coaching and therapy and consulting, and that might help just, get clear about what that looks like. Secondly, just prioritizing filling your own cup. And for everybody, that looks different. And I don't want to use that buzzword of self-care.
You do a face mask and you'll be fine.
Yeah. No, it's going to be small, consistent steps. And for some people, that is just prioritizing a walk in the morning. For other people, it's getting a great night's sleep. For other people, it's, planning eating well, or, cutting out alcohol, or just, I guess, really looking after their bodies, because we've been through a lot. It can't be underestimated, the impact of the last couple of years on, our physical, mental and emotional health. So don't feel guilty about filling up your cup at the moment, because it's really important for the sustainability of your business. And one last thing I want to just pass on as well, just, I guess, understanding why our mind and body might be hanging on to that crisis response that I was talking about earlier. So, asking ourselves, is that burnout response now habitual? So, it can be for some people. It becomes a way of working because it's giving us something. And if we're feeling low on energy, sometimes it gives us energy. And so actually asking yourself about, if we're trapped in any of those patterns of behavior, are we understanding that a burnout response, or going into that really like overworking and burning ourselves out and then picking ourselves up again, does that give us energy? Does it give us self-esteem? Does it make us feel more confident about the impact that we're having? Is it now part of our identity? That can happen in a trauma experience, that we become the event. And so just, I guess, asking yourself, what does it actually give me to stay in that space? And being really, really honest with yourself about that, because often our answer to that question can unlock something that helps you to shift it and helps you to redefine it. So that's just a really simple question, and I guess a reflective exercise that you could do for yourself.
And I think now of all time is a time where many people are leaving the industry, and for sadly not always great reasons. But if you're still committed to your business and you still adore and love your business, how do you know, or how do you decide whether burnout is a sign that you should move on and quit and close it all down, or whether you should continue forward and, hey, it's just a temporary thing? How do you differentiate that?
Yeah, that's such a good question. And in a way, I'm not a great person to talk to about it, because one of our business values is perseverance. So we always want to encourage clients to keep on going. However, much like your mental health, if it's interfering with your daily function, if it is sacrificing your quality of life, it's time to look at things, because, work is not meant to dominate life. If you've fallen out of love with the work, everyone around you will be feeling it too. So your team will be feeling it. Your clients, your customers will be feeling it. And that is not going to end well. That's not going to be, you being your absolute best. So if you have completely fallen out of love, either you spend some time building back that joy, or have a think about whether it is interfering with your, just your quality of life day to day. And if it is, something has to change. Doesn't mean you've got to shut the doors. It just might mean that you've got to design this business to be different to how it is today.
Yeah. Do you have advice for a wedding business trying to emerge from a pandemic, burnout or not?
Yes, I do. I think that question that I posed before was the start. So understanding why your mind and your body is hanging out in that crisis space that is causing the burnout response is really important. And burnout usually begins with an event or a perceived situation that begins that downward spiral. So this is based around Dr. Barbara Fredrickson's work. I can link something in the show notes if you'd like.
Yeah.
But that idea of the downward spiral is that identifying what triggers that downward spiral before you get to that point, and being able to build some strengths-based preventative approaches before you get to that trigger can really help you gain control back of that feeling. So, stepping back 2 steps, what's that initial response that takes you to that burnout space? And then what can we put into place to ensure that you're in the best possible position to deal with that initial response? So I'll give you an example, and hopefully that might help. So, burnout spiral for some people might start with receiving overdue bills. I know that definitely triggers me. Does that trigger you as well?
Oh, yeah.
Triggers
always.
Most people. So asking yourself, what is the feeling that is triggered when you receive that overdue bill? And often it's something like, if we were to really kind of, narrow it down, it's actually surprise or overwhelm, or can you think of any other emotions that you might have got?
Shame.
That's all.
Shame. For me, it's shame. It's like, oh, okay, I haven't seen this coming, or...
Totally, yeah. What does that mean about my ability to run this business? What does that mean about my ability to do this? Absolutely. Shame's such a powerful emotion as well. So rather than worrying about the overdue bill, actually put in place some preparedness around addressing that feeling. So, instead of worrying about the overdue bill coming through, maybe we can say, okay, we're going to start to set up some systems so the overdue bills don't become overdue bills. So maybe it's a separate email address that we ask all of our suppliers to email bills into, and therefore every week we check them, we pay them off. I guess before we pay anything else, we pay those bills, and we know that attentiveness and preventing the bills to be getting to a point where they're overdue is actually going to prevent that feeling, and therefore you're creating a little intervention before that downward spiral.
And I guess too, it's also about then your boundaries around, because the systems for me are tied very much into boundaries of, okay, this is happening and this is happening. And so I know what's happening and I know that this is the limit of that situation. So if you're creating those boundaries as well, I think that could also help you with the burnout from what you're saying.
Absolutely.
Of, right, I'm going to, instead of saying to myself, I'm not going to work after 5 and you know you can't stick to it, turn your laptop off or divert your phone, or the systems that actually hold you accountable for those things.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, looking at the response to the response. So
yes,
rather than worrying about the overdue bill, see it in terms of, okay, what is the feeling that actually starts that downward spiral of surprise, overwhelm, shame, all of those really kind of in the moment feelings that are quite acute. And it might just be, looking at your systems, getting them to work smoothly for you, implementing changes now as things are starting to get back into a rhythm. Just asking yourself, why are these bills getting to a point of being overdue? Is it my cash flow? Yeah. Do I need to look at that? Do I need to get my expenses down? Or is it just the system in which I'm not organising, my paperwork? And so, that can just help you to sort of, create a bit of a pathway forward that you're going to feel a little bit more in control of the outcome. So that's a really good little tidbit that anybody can try, but also just work on preparing for the future. So, making sure that you're starting to practice again, feeling in control of what's going to happen in the future, which we haven't felt for so long. So
how do we do that?
I know, this is it. Like, it's a really universal problem, the inability to trust what is going to happen next week, let alone in 6 months' time. And then how do we actually start to to plan a business when we can't think 6 months in advance anymore? It's really tough. Yeah. And that adds to burnout as well, because we're so in the moment, we're so in the day-to-day and very short-sighted that we're not getting the energy from actually going, okay, what could this be? What do we want it to be? And how do we reinvigorate that sense of joy in the work and start to feel hopeful again that this could actually be stable?
And I think that's part of when I asked you earlier about how do you know when to move on or not, is that when you still have that sense of hope, and obviously when you still love your business, but when you still have that sense of hope of what your business could be.
Absolutely.
I think it's, for me, has always been a sign that, yes, I still want to do this because I know what it could be and I still feel excited about its future. I just don't feel excited about right now, for instance, in that situation.
That's so true. Yeah. Hope is a really important feeling to feel when you're coming out of a time like we've been dealing with. If you can even just see a glimmer of what you want it to be in the future and the changes that you could make and the improvements and the potential of what your business could be, then absolutely keep going, because that extinguishes when you're ready to give up. It's gone.
Yeah.
So if it's still there, there's still some hope.
I feel like that's a really good place to kind of end on. It's a really positive end. But before we completely end it, just let's talk my favorite thing in the world, which, as you know, is technology. Tell me about your favorite technology for running craft coaching and consulting, because I love hearing what other people use, and I hope other people love this as well.
Oh, I love this too. And these are, no joke, some things that have really helped with burnout for our business. Good systems, good software that just is a pleasure to pay that bill. When you get that bill every month, you just go,
I don't know any software that makes it a pleasure to pay a bill.
I have two. I have two pieces of software that I go, I would love to pay that bill this month. Thank you. You make my life so much easier. And that is ClickUp. And I know that you've paid with ClickUp too. ClickUp's awesome. Yep. And for your industry, for the wedding industry that we're talking about today, this is definitely a great piece of software to explore, because there's plenty of automation that you can start to put into place So for events, bookings, all those sorts of things that, there's so much complexity with weddings. And if you see weddings as just a project, ClickUp is your ultimate project management tool. So ClickUp is one bill I love paying every month. And then the other one is Acuity. So much like ClickUp, it just helps us to run our business seamlessly. It is all automated. Everybody gets reminders. Everybody can, reschedule their own sessions. We use it for bookings for one-on-one clients and, for intro calls. And it's just a joy to work with. So they're the two. And those two have definitely helped with my burnout, that's for sure.
I think automation and technology is well underrated, and I know that our members will probably be very tired of me talking about it because I love good technology and automation because it just saves so much time. So I'm really thrilled to hear your two picks because I think we've got to make more use of them.
I agree. And you use technology so beautifully, like to your advantage. So, you're a good role model there.
I think it's the perfect thing to make life easier when you're doing 100 things at once.
Yes, yes, that's it. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, and I really hope that anyone listening who feels despair and depressed and sad in the thick of burnout after 2.5 years of an unforeseeable trauma event can take something away from this and can find some peace in it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'll make sure that there's some resources up in the show notes for people as well. And I hope this chat has helped, but we need to start talking about it because it's real.
We definitely do.
Yeah.
It's real and it's intense.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. I really hope it helped you. If you'd like to find out more about Amy and anything about the show that we mentioned today, head on over to polkadotwedding.com/podcast. We've put a full transcript in there of today's episode, as well as all the links mentioned. You can also find out how to book Amy for your own coaching over there as well. Now, if you are a wedding vendor, I am putting my hand out to you to say, come and join us. We really believe that couples should be finding vendors that suit them and not us. So we're not invitation only. We've ditched everything like charm pricing, different packages, all that kind of stuff. We've got one price, one package, and we offer so much more than just advertising. There's content marketing. We drop into your inbox regularly, especially every week. You get a little bit of business information, inspo, etc. And we really want to support you. We think the wedding vendors in Australia are amazing and we want them on our side. And we would love to get to know you. If you are the first time listening to this podcast, make sure you subscribe. We'd love you to stick along for the ride and make sure you hop on over and give us a review and a rating. Love today's episode? You can find more on polkadotwedding.com/podcast. We'd love to hear feedback, so drop us an email at podcast@polkadotwedding.com. Can't wait to hear from you.